here on online here this Tuesday morning. We are talking sports now with Chris Graham of the Augusta Free Press, who is here to talk a little high school and college football, mainly college football, because we are into the conference championship games for the most part. Big East still has some regular season games coming up on Saturday to decide which Big East team will get the representative into the BCS game, which a lot of college football fans don't like, Chris, but take a look at the odds right now. South Florida just beat Miami last week. They host UConn. UConn controls their own destiny, but if South Florida can play like they did against Miami, that really leaves things up to West Virginia. West Virginia hosting Rutgers. So, everybody says that UConn controls its own destiny, but if you look at the odds right now, I would think, West Virginia's got a great shot at a BCS game.
You're exactly right. Yeah, UConn's got a tough game on the road, and West Virginia with a very winnable game at home. And I have to think here that the Big East, I think, might be secretly rooting, or not so secretly rooting, for West Virginia to be its BCS representative. Nothing against UConn. If you win and you earn your way in, great for you. But the cachet, so to speak, of these two programs is so different. West Virginia has been a national player for a number of years, and UConn.
No, I assume West Virginia they'll send more fans. They travel better, I would assume, than UConn.
Yeah, I don't know that UConn. I don't know anything about their home their home stadium or anything else. I mean, how many fans they even get to home games, much less how well they might travel. I think this would interfere with basketball season for them. So yeah, I think the Big East, and I think certainly the BCS is hopeful that somehow, some way, West Virginia can represent that conference in the BCS, because that could lead to an attractive matchup in the Orange Bowl, potentially with Virginia Tech or with Florida State. I guess you can say that too.
I would love. I'm not sure how the ACC game is going to turn out. Obviously, it's Saturday between Florida State and Virginia Tech, but when it comes to watching a bowl game or BCS game that doesn't factor into the national championship picture, that is a really intriguing matchup that I would love to see during the regular season revived. Is Virginia Tech maybe against West Virginia?
Yes, certainly. They had a great series going on for a long time. For a few years, that was in the Big East, and then they continued it for a couple years in the ACC Big East rivalry, and the game has fallen off the schedule. And I can understand from both perspectives. It's a tough game, going in every other year into the other person's home and having to, think that there might be a loss in the schedule. I would like to see that revived, but in the meantime, if they can play a bowl game, wow, what a great thing for fans, and what a great thing for just general college fans, and to have that potential matchup. If UConn's in the mix, that just throws the whole BCS off. One, the BCS once again loses luster, because you have a team that shouldn't be in there, with a lot of teams who potentially should be. I mean, somebody's going to be left out looking in if UConn's in there, and even if West Virginia's in there, to be honest. But at least West Virginia has some name recognition. And two, it really throws a loop for the ACC. Then it looks like what all the conjecture we're hearing right now is that if UConn gets the Big East bid, we're going to likely see Stanford playing the Orange Bowl against either Florida State or Virginia Tech, and that'd be a great game. Stanford's number 4 in the BCS right now, and has played great football and has been on the fringe of the national championship picture the last few weeks. But one, they don't, they're not going to travel. They don't have a big fan base that's going to travel to the Orange Bowl, so it's going to be, a half-empty stadium. And two, we don't really have any ties to Stanford as far as that goes. So we would be hopeful for a Virginia Tech West Virginia game, or a Florida State West Virginia game, because there are ties there. We know those programs have matched up in recent years, but we'll have to see. If UConn wins this game, then more power to them. They've earned their way in the BCS.
Now, the ACC Championship Game, last night I saw have Virginia Tech by 4, so how do you size up the Hokies and the Seminoles?
Well, two very evenly matched teams, both at the top of the ACC in scoring and points allowed. You look at the other numbers, though, a little surprising. The total defense numbers for both are not as strong as you would expect. Virginia Tech actually 7th in the ACC in total defense this year. They're usually a top 10 national team, so it shows that Virginia Tech has struggled this year with all the replacements they had to make on defense. We assumed they would get better as the year went on, and I guess they have to a degree, but certainly not to the level that we expect from a Bud Foster defense. What's surprising is that offense has carried the way this year for this team. They've put up points in big numbers in games they needed to. For example, the win over NC State, a team that could have been in the mix for this ACC Championship game back in early October. The Hokies had to outscore the NC State team and won 41-30. So it's the offense carrying the way for Virginia Tech. And on the other side of the ball, Christian Ponder came into the season. Florida State was touting him as a Heisman candidate. He had a good season, not quite that level, Heisman level season, but a solid season. But their defense also given up some yards this year. They're also around the number 4 or 5 in the ACC in total defense. But bottom line, they're getting things done when it comes to scoring and not giving up points. They're doing what they need to do. So, little things you see. Pass efficiency defense for Virginia Tech, number 2 in the ACC. Their run defense also number 2 in the ACC. You're getting lots of, Virginia Tech's getting lots of special teams play. Maybe not as much in the block kicked area as we've seen in past years, but a couple of return touchdowns by David Wilson, and getting shorter fields as a result of their great return system this year. So it could be, I think, a very even game going in. And I'm not surprised by that line of only 4 points now. I think these are two very evenly matched teams, and we haven't seen them play this year. They didn't match up in the regular season. So a lot of uncertainty going into this game as to how this one will turn out.
I'm not sure about last year, but I know in past years, I think they play this game around noon or 1 o'clock, and this year I think they're playing in at around 8 o'clock, 7:45, and I thought, boy, it'd be nice if they played earlier in the day. I know they're probably get better ratings later in the day, but I thought, it'd be nice if they played earlier in the day so we can watch that game without any interruptions from another conference championship game, and then at 8 o'clock, be prepared to watch Oklahoma and Nebraska in the Big 12.
Yeah, well, now we have to flip back and forth, and the ACC fought their way into a primetime spot. The first few ACC championship games were played earlier in the day, and there was that famous one that was played in a driving rainstorm. I think that was 06 maybe, Georgia Tech and Wake Forest, and that game was just abysmal. I think the final score was 9-6. Rainstorm, half-empty stadium, and I think that was a turning point for the ACC in a negative way. They've moved the game around now. They're in Charlotte, closer to the ACC's natural geographic base, and they've gotten into primetime. And they got the matchup I think that they would have hoped for. I mean, certainly this was what the writers before the season, back when I was at the ACC football kickoff back in July, the prediction was Virginia Tech winning the Coastal, Florida State winning the Atlantic, them matching up in this championship game. And how interesting it is that we go through this whole season. And, Virginia Tech starts off 0-2. Florida State was, they lost their second game in the ACC back in late October, and didn't look like for a long time that this was going to be the game, but we got the game we won, and it's in prime time. Maybe not quite the high national rankings we would hope for these two teams, Virginia Tech number 12 in the AP and Florida State number 20, but, good enough, and one of these two teams will represent us in the BCS, and unlike the Big East situation where it could be UConn, we have two teams with national fan bases, with great reputations for traveling to bowl games, so we'll be well represented in the Orange Bowl no matter who wins this game.
And that would really be a heck of a turnaround for the Hokies after that JMU loss made them 0-2 to beat Florida State, get into a BCS game, win the BCS game, and finish the season just with those two losses.
Oh, no question. I mean, I remember saying after the JMU loss that there's a possibility, hey, Tech can win out and go to the ACC Championship game. They could be 10-2. The way this team plays, that could very well happen. I remember in 1995, the Hokies started 0-2. I think they had losses to Boston College and then Cincinnati. And Cincinnati back then was a bad loss for Virginia Tech. I mean, that wasn't a good Cincinnati team back then. And they won the rest of the way. They won out. Of course, there were no conference championship games, 11-game regular season, so they finished the season 10-2, but they won the Sugar Bowl. They beat Texas in the Sugar Bowl. And so Frank Beamer has a history of being able to turn around slow starts. You don't want to see the slow start, especially with the team they had coming in. A lot of people thought they were a national championship contender. But to their credit, they were out of the national championship picture after week 2, after a loss to JMU. And they turned things around. And Frank Beamer, in his press conference this week leading in to the ACC Championship game, talked about how on that Monday, after that JMU loss, I mean, it could have been everybody hanging their heads down and let's pack it in, we're done. He said that the guys came back and wanted to go to work. They wanted to correct what was wrong, and they were working harder than they were even in the preseason, thinking they were going to win the national championship. So a credit to that program that they could have those two tough losses, the last-minute loss to Boise State and then that just demoralizing loss to James Madison. They could turn around as quickly as they did and go undefeated. First ACC team to go unbeaten in conference play since that national championship team in 2000 of Florida State. That's pretty much a credit to this team that they could have those two demoralizing losses early in the season and turn around and be playing in this championship game with an unbeaten ACC record.
Hey, Chris, to wrap things up, college basketball, right now we're into the ACC-Big Challenge, and of course UVA got a shocking victory, big second half last night, knocking off Minnesota.
Yeah, I watched that game, and they were down big in the first half, down 13 points at one point in the first half, down 10 at halftime. Minnesota seemed to be easily in control, and then the Cavs just started making shots and didn't stop. It seemed like they ended up the game 10 for 13 from three-point range. Had great games from Mustafa Farrakhan, 23 points, a career high. Freshman Joe Harris, 24 points, and really, hitting threes, running off curls. That team was really hitting on all cylinders offensively. I think we saw last night a Virginia team grow up in front of us. Minnesota, number 13 in the country, a win over North Carolina earlier in the season, have had them on the ropes, in their arena, and the Cavs come back and win big. They won by 8, but they led by as many as, I think it was 14 was their biggest lead in that second half. So a really interesting situation. Virginia gets the ACC off to a good start. Going into this particular ACC Big Ten challenge, the Big Ten comes in with 5 teams ranked in the top 25. The ACC only 1, which is just mind-boggling to think that the ACC has only 1 team ranked, Duke number 1. Virginia Tech has stumbled this year. Carolina stumbled and fallen out of the top 25. But Virginia gets a win over a ranked Big Ten team. Maybe gets the ACC off to a good start.
And a good game coming up, I believe, Wednesday night as Virginia Tech takes on Purdue, a Purdue team that just lost to Richmond.
Yeah, Purdue team that just lost to Richmond, still ranked in the top 25, but Richmond is no slouch. Richmond's going to be either a at-large team, a conference champion, or a team that just misses the NCAA tournament if things go Richmond's got things on track this year, so nothing to sneeze at there. But yeah, Virginia Tech comes off a loss themselves. They lost to UNLV in that 76 Classic final, and it was a good game. UNLV is going to be an NCAA tournament team this year, and Tech hung with them for a good stretch. But I think Tech fans would have expected going into the season they would be hanging with teams, they'd be beating teams, and they've lost to Kansas State and UNLV. Nothing to get upset about in either situation there. They lost at Kansas State, and they pretty much, they're across the country losing to UNLV. But they've got a chance now to get back on the schneid. Last year's Tech team, 23-7 in the regular season, and didn't get an NCAA tournament bid despite finishing really high in the ACC and having some great games down the stretch. And the criticism was they didn't play a tough non-conference schedule. Well, they're playing a tough non-conference schedule, but it doesn't do you a lot of good to play a tough non-conference schedule if you lose to the tough teams you're playing. So they got a chance here with Purdue to get a big win. And then, of course, on Sunday, in an early ACC game, Virginia travels to Virginia Tech, and so the rivalry will continue this weekend on Sunday. Those two teams will get a chance to square off.
Any predictions of that game?
Before last night, I would have said that Tech would have the advantage. They're a senior-laden team. They've got a lot of experience back, and the Cavs are young, but the Cavs won on the road in a tough environment in Minnesota. So I think that you can look and see. I think we can expect a good game on Sunday night. I still think Tech has the home court advantage, and that'll be a big thing for them. But this Cavs team has played some tough games themselves, and might be battle tested by this point. Usually this time of year, both these teams usually in years past have played weak schedules, and so their first tough opponent could be a challenge for them. But they've already played some big games, and both have won some big games. So I expect a knockdown, drag-out brawl Sunday.
Okay, Chris, and what do we look for in the coming days from both the Augusta Free Press and Virginia Sports Online?
Our sports coverage will be heavy with ACC Championship Game, a couple of columns coming up on Frank Beamer and his team, and looking at Florida State and their preparations for the game as well, and also trying to get folks ready for that Virginia Tech game in basketball on Sunday night. So got a lot of ACC keeping our attention this week.
Sounds great. Chris Graham with the Augusta Free Press and Virginia Sports Online right there. And we will come back for more of the show here on this Tuesday right after this.